Welcome to the Wednesday edition of the Morning Pitt. Wednesday is always a big day here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. We get the Morning Pitt in the morning, and you get the Panther-Lair show at night. I always look forward to that. I get to talk to you twice in one day. We start the day off right here with the Morning Pitt, as we always do on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. And then we come back to you at night, 8:30 p.m. for the live Panther-Lair show. Again, right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. You should always have a browser window open to that website right there, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. As a Pitt fan, you want to be tuned in to the latest breaking Pitt news, everything going on in Pitt sports, football, basketball, and recruiting. You want to be tied into all of that and kind of know what's going on at all points. And so you should always have that browser window open, but kind of complementary to our coverage there at Panther-Lair.com. We've got this right here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, where we have a lot of video content. I mean, all day, every day. And if you hit that subscribe button, you're never going to miss any of it. You'll get notifications. You turn on the notifications, and you'll get alerts sent to your phone whenever we post a new video. So we post, we have videos of the Pitt coaches who spoke yesterday, Tim Salem and Charlie Partridge. We have these Morning Pitt videos that we do every morning that we release around 7 a.m., give or take a few minutes in either direction. We have the live Panther-Lair show that we do on Wednesday nights. You'll get a notification when that thing starts. And then we have the post-game show. So we'll have that after the Virginia Tech game this week. 3:30 kickoff at Acrisure Stadium. We'll get done with the game, cover the post-game press conferences and everything, and then work our way back to the Panther-Lair studios where we'll go live for the post-game show. And if you're worried that you're not going to know when that show is starting, if you're worried about what time we're going to get going, might be 9, 9:30, might be 10, might be 8:30, whatever it is, if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, you turn on the notifications, you're never going to miss it. You will know when we go live, and you'll be part of the conversation. We had a very lively discussion after the Georgia Tech game on Saturday, talked a lot in that post-game show about Pitt's offense and some of the issues facing the offense and how the offense really, ultimately that loss fell on the offense. We carried over that conversation to the Monday Morning Pitt. We talked about it even a little bit yesterday on the Morning Pitt, even though our focus was largely on the Coastal Division, what's been going on in the ACC, and also the depth chart that Pitt released on Monday. We talked about that a lot yesterday. I don't want every day's episode to be about the offense, although we could certainly find topics to discuss there. But I did want to shift over to the defense and the special teams today, because I think there are some relevant topics to discuss on that side of the ball. Those two phases, whether you want to buy into the coach line, coach speak that the three phases are all equally important. I'm not entirely sure that they are. Obviously, I think most people will probably agree offense and defense matters a little bit more since they're on the field so much and they directly control points scored and points denied. But there's no denying that special teams is pretty, it carries a lot of weight and is fairly important. And I think there are questions that Pitt still needs to answer when it comes to the special teams units, in addition to the defense. And just starting on special teams, they've gotten, they had the punt return touchdown from MJ Devonshire. That was great. But a bigger problem, though, is sort of what has developed. Certainly, this past game was the worst. But it's sort of been a lingering issue over the last 3 games, and that's penalties on special teams. They had 6 special teams penalties in that game against in the loss to Georgia Tech. Now, only 4 of those were accepted because they had the double whammy of multiple special teams penalties on 2 plays. There were actually 14 penalties called on Pitt in that game. Only 12, if you look in the record book, it'll show that Pitt was penalized 12 times. They were actually penalized 14 times. They only got away with 12 because on some of those plays, there were 2 penalties on the same play. So, when P.J. O'Brien gets called for roughing the kicker and Jaden Bradley gets called for an illegal block in the back on the same play, well, Georgia Tech had an easy decision to take the roughing the kicker penalty for the automatic first down in the 15 yards, as opposed to the block in the back, which would give Pitt the ball and just push them back 10 yards. And so when you sort of disregard, accepted versus non-accepted, and you just count the flags that were thrown, you have 14 penalties in that game, and 6 of them are on special teams. There were 6 offensive penalties and 2 defensive penalties, and 6 on special teams. So you've got as many penalties on the special teams units as you had on the offense. And the offense had its issues. They had like 3 false starts. Although, I mean, to be honest, when you have the ball at the 1 yard line, like your own 1 yard line, you might as well try and jump the snap as quick as you can. I mean, what do you have to lose? Are they going to move you back 6 inches? And then 3 inches after that? I mean, you're already taking the snap in the end zone. I don't, I think they had 2 false starts from the one. I think Matt Gonsalves and Branson Taylor each had one. So, didn't do anything. You don't lose a down. It'd be funny if if you were inside the 5 or inside the 10 or something like that, or maybe inside the 5, if the opposing coach had the option to, take a loss of down on that play. But that's not the case, so who cares if you jump? I mean, maybe you showed your formation to the defense, but I'd rather you jump and maybe get it wrong, or I'd rather you jump and have a chance to sort of get a head start on the lineman across the line of scrimmage from you, rather than be a step behind. And if they call a penalty, who cares? You just basically are lining up in the same spot for the same play again. But that's neither here nor there. So, I mean, you had 3 false starts, I think, but 2 of them were right down there near the goal line. Now, if we're going to split hairs on special teams, you had 6 penalties, and one of those was a delay of game intentionally taken to push back the punt team and give them more room to work. But you've got 3 block in the back penalties, a roughing the kicker penalty, and a holding penalty, in addition to the delay of game. So you've got 5 pretty bad penalties in that game. And that comes after the Rhode Island game when they had 1 block in the back, also on Jaden Bradley. So he's got 2 in back-to-back weeks. And then, the Western Michigan game, there was a block in the back and a holding penalty. And I didn't see who those were called on. But that's an issue because these 9 special teams penalties that Pitt has taken so far this season have all been in the last 3 games. They didn't have any special teams penalties against West Virginia or Tennessee, but they've had 9 in the last 3 games. And that's a bit of a concern. 5 illegal blocks in the back, 2 holding penalties, 1 roughing, and then the delay of game. And Pat Narduzzi talked on Monday about the block in the back, how they're trying to teach guys to do this or do that, and they're too much effort or not enough effort. I don't know what it is, but what I do know is that you're giving up yards. There was a situation, I believe, on the play with the roughing, where MJ Devonshire, I think, took the punt back to like the 46 or something. It was at the Pitt 46. Well, after they call those penalties and, Georgia Tech drives again, and then they end up punting, and I think there was another penalty on that punt. I think that might have been when there was a block in the back and a holding. Like, they ended up with the ball at their own 15. It was like 31 lost yards because they kept screwing up on the penalties. And I mean, you could say, well, Devonshire doesn't get to the 46 without the block in the back or whatever. But you understand, this is a significant difference when you're losing 15 or 30 yards of field position because of your penalties on special teams on a night when your offense is not moving the ball very well. They could use every yard they could get, let alone 30. And so our focus is always on the offense, and it should be on the offense right now because the offense is the unit that is really, I mean, it's the biggest question mark of this team, and it was the biggest question mark entering the season, and it's the unit that is holding the team back right now, scoring 7 points through the first 3 quarters. Scoring 7 points through, what time was it when they scored their second touchdown? They scored their second touchdown with 1:25 to play in the fourth quarter. So do the math on that. That's 45 minutes plus 13:35. I mean, 58 minutes and 35 seconds, they scored 7 points. I don't... Well, no, I guess that was Georgia Tech's touchdown. Sorry, hold on. Pitt scored their second touchdown to make it 19-14 with 1:57 to go. Okay, so now you're at 48 minutes and 3 seconds. All right, so the first 48 minutes and 3 seconds of this game, you scored 7 points. So no matter how much we talk about special teams penalties, the issue is still in the offense. But here's the thing, and this applies to the defense and the special teams. When your offense is struggling like that, when your offense has 7 points through 58 minutes and 3 seconds, there's a much slimmer margin for error for the defense and the special teams. And mostly we'll talk about the defense. Mostly we'll talk about how, well, if the offense is struggling like that, defense has to pick up the slack. And it works the other way too. If defense is struggling, the offense has to pick up the slack. But neither one of them can afford to have screw-ups like that on special teams, where you take 6 penalties, where you have multiple instances of multiple penalties. Giving first downs, pushing your offense back further, creating another 10 yards that the offense has to gain just to have a chance to score. When your offense is struggling, you can't afford to make those mistakes. Pat Narduzzi was asked after the game about special teams penalties, and he said we have to get the right guys out there who aren't going to do that. And I don't know. I mean, obviously, rewatching the video, he was very displeased with PJ O'Brien after the roughing the punter call. Certainly, Jaden Bradley going back-to-back weeks with blocking the back penalties is not going to have the coaches smiling upon him, even though he had 2 very nice touchdown catches. He also had a blocking the back penalty on offense last week against Rhode Island. So, you maybe keep an eye on him a little bit of whether he still works on the punt return unit or the coverage units or kind of what happens with his playing time on special teams. But the reality is you just need to be clean there. You don't have to be great. Sure, it's fantastic if you can flip a game with a big special teams play, a return for a touchdown or a block or something like that. Those things, obviously, it's great if you can do it. But the first thing you have to do when it comes to special teams is not screw up. I always say, with punt returns, and I know Pitt scored a touchdown on a punt return this year. To me, with punt returns, I just want a guy who can catch the ball. I really just want someone who's going to catch the ball. I'm far less concerned with getting a big return than I am with avoiding a turnover. Just catch the ball at the 25 or the 17 or the 32 or wherever it may be and give the offense a chance. Fumbling a punt doesn't give your offense a chance and puts you in a bad position. And so I sort of have that approach with special teams overall. Yes, you like to get those big, exciting splash plays, but for the most part, just be solid. Kick every kickoff out of the end zone. If you can kick it out of the end zone and get a touchback, kick it out of the end zone and get a touchback. Every punt, put it really high in the sky and give your coverage team time to get down there and make the tackle. Have a punt return or force a fair catch. And your punt returner, just, fair catch, every catch, unless it's something like, unless it's something like the one that MJ Devonshire had against, or I guess it was Rhode Island, where, they outkicked the coverage and he's able to take it back because he's got such an easy and obvious path to the end zone. But for the most part, just fair catch and take it. Kick returns, I like kick returns, or giving a guy a chance on a kick return because there's, less defensive players closing in on him as he's catching the ball, so I'm not as worried about the ball getting dropped. And then also, I think you've got time to sort of set up a return a little bit better. So I put my fastest guy back there who can catch the ball, and then try and set up a return. And if the other 10 guys do their jobs, then my fast guy can get through the hole and take off for a touchdown. I'm all about playing it safe on special teams. And if you have guys who are going to take penalties and commit penalties, and in this game, it was Jaden Bradley, like I said, with a block in the back. It was Nick Lappy with a block in the back. It was Stephon Hall with a block in the back. They didn't call a number on the holding penalty, but they did call PJ O'Brien on the roughing. You can't have those guys doing that. And if those guys are habitual offenders or seem like they're close to offending on a habitual basis, then they have to be replaced. You can find other guys to make tackles and block on special teams. The other thing I'll say about special teams, and I don't think Sam Vanderhaar really punted all that much against Rhode Island. I don't know if he punted at all. I have this stat out here. He punted once. Against Rhode Island. It was a 34-yard punt. So we haven't seen him as much. But I think that has sort of taken away some of the concern that maybe existed early in the season. And obviously it's been a learning curve for Sam Vanderhaar, adjusting to American rules football, getting used to how it's played, how defenses are going to play, how teams are going to try and come after him. But we haven't seen a whole lot of him recently, but those concerns were there early in the season. And just looking at the numbers, what did he end up? He ended up punting 6 times against Georgia Tech. Averaged 38 yards per punt. Had one punt inside the 20. His long punt was 42 yards. No touchbacks, which is good. He hasn't kicked a touchback yet, but I don't think he's kicked it far enough for a touchback. He's averaging less than 39 yards per punt. And distance on punts, I think the NCAA in their official stat page ranks punters according to the distance of their punts. I'm not a big fan of that because you never know where you're going to be punting from. If you're punting from the 40 and you get a 59-yard punt, it's probably not that great because it's going to go into the end zone. You know what I mean? And you could be punting from your own 10 and have a 60-yard punt, and that's going to put the ball at the 30, right? I mean, it's not that it's not easy to, or I don't think you can really look at punting average and draw conclusions about how a guy's doing. Now, there are some other interesting stats here to consider. He's punted 16 times so far, no touchbacks, which is good, but only 4 fair catches. And 3 punts inside the 20, 1 punt of 50-plus yards. 6 out of his 16 punts have been returned. I'm a big fair catch guy. When I punt, if I'm a coach, coughing corner and all this stuff, down and inside the 10 or inside the 5, all that, I want to punt it in such a way and have my coverage set up in such a way that I'm going to get a fair catch. It's the safest thing. You're not going to overrun it. You're not going to interfere. Just a fair catch. 4 fair catches on 16 punts, 1 out of every 4, right? And that's 25%. Doesn't seem like a great percentage to me. For comparison, Kirk Christodoulou last year was pretty close to half. He had 61 punts and he had 28 fair catches. He also put 21 of his punts inside the 20. Vanderhaar has 3 of his 16 punts inside the 20. So on a percentage basis, as far as getting fair catches and putting the ball inside the 20, Vanderhaar is not performing at the level that Christodoulou did last year. Now, Vanderhaar is a freshman. Christodoulou was a redshirt senior. He had been punting for a longer time. He was older. He was stronger. He was more experienced. All those things, are factors here. But if you're looking at a drop-off from last year to this year, there are some in those numbers of only 4 fair catches, and only 3 punts inside the 20. And 6 returns on 16 punts. Christodoulou last year on 61 punts had 11 returns. I would have to look at those kicks and look at those plays to see what happened here or happened there, but it doesn't seem, when you look at, already being almost halfway to, or past halfway, toward the total that Christodoulou, a total of returns. I feel like anytime you allow a team to return a punt, you're taking a risk. Even though I said that if it's me, I want my guy just fair catching every time. There is a risk that a guy's going to have a big return if you allow him to bring it back. And so that is concerning and maybe something to keep an eye on of whether teams are going to keep getting opportunities to return Pitt's punts and if anything comes out of it. One other weird stat, and I don't know what to make of this at all. I'm really not sure what it is, and I don't know if it's an intention. It's something we'll probably have to ask Pat Narduzzi about. Last year, in 14 games, Pitt's opponents returned a total of 19 kickoffs. 19 kickoff returns by Pitt's opponents in 14 games. This year, through 5 games, 15 kickoff returns. I don't get that. I don't know if there's an intention there, if there's an objective to, because the fair catch, the ball comes out to the 25, or the touchback, the ball comes out to the 25. Maybe they're trying to put these in a returnable position so that opponents are bringing the ball out and getting tackled short of the 25, and maybe that's working. We'll have to look at the starting field position, but I thought that was an interesting stat. And I'm not really sure, like I say, what to make of it. We'll have to ask Pat Narduzzi next time we get an opportunity to talk to him. And then I want to flip over to the defense real quick. And I want to go back to the Georgia Tech game here, express a few of the concerns about the special teams units. But going back to the Georgia Tech game, and it does kind of tie in with the special teams. We said that, when your offense is playing like Pitt's offense was against the Yellow Jackets, you have your margin for error is thinner for the defense and the special teams. Because you just can't afford to make a mistake. And for the most part, Pitt's defense really didn't make a mistake in this game, for the most part. They give up 9 points through the first 3 quarters. When did Georgia Tech scored another field goal, their 4th field goal? Where was it? To make it 12-7 with 12:40 left in the 4th quarter. So, you're looking at 47 minutes or so, 47 and a half minutes of 12-point football, That's great. That's really, really good. You're one of the best defenses in the country if you can do that on a consistent basis. The problem is what happened after that. What happened after that is Georgia Tech did a couple things. For one, they converted 3rd downs. On the game, Georgia Tech was 5 of 17 on 3rd down. In the 4th quarter, they were 3 of 5. So in the first 3 quarters, they only converted 2 3rd downs out of 12 attempts. In the 4th quarter, they go 3 of 5 on 3rd down. What's the big difference there? The down and distance. In the 4th quarter, Georgia Tech's 5 3rd downs faced: 3rd and 3, 3rd and 11, which we'll get to, 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2, and 3rd and goal from the 1. So 2 3rd and 3s, a 3rd and 2, and a 3rd and goal from the 1. 3rd and goal from the 1, they didn't convert. That ended up turning into a Pitt possession. 3rd and 11, they did convert on a long run, a 13-yard run. If you remember that play, I think it was Hassan Hall, ran into the pile, and it looked like he was, it's 3rd and 11. It looked like he was stopped for about 5 yards or 4 yards. It was from the Pitt, 31 or so, somewhere in the Pitt 30s. So you kind of assume that was a 4-down territory call, run the ball, chip away at that 3rd and 11, hope you can get 4 to 7 yards and have a more manageable 4th down attempt. And that's what it looked like was going to happen until the pile just kept moving and moving and moving and moving until it was a 13-yard run for a 1st down. That drive ended up in the field goal that made it 12-7. The next drive, Georgia Tech's next drive, was even more concerning because on 4 plays, and this was after the Vincent Davis fumble, they didn't face a single 3rd down. They ran 4 plays, and they were all 1st and 2nd downs, including the touchdown play, which made it 19-7. The next time they get the ball back, it's 19-14. Pitt, I think it was 19-14. Or it was probably still 19-7, but Georgia Tech faces a 3rd and 2 that they convert, and then the 3rd and goal from the 1 that they didn't convert. Pitt ended up driving to make it 19-14. And then on their final drive, Georgia Tech's final drive, where they get the ball back after Pitt makes it 19-14, again they don't face a 3rd down, and they end up scoring a touchdown to set the final, reach their final score of 26 points, which is enough to keep Pitt at arm's length until the final horn. And this was the problem. And there were a couple problems here in the 4th quarter for Pitt's defense. One was the short 3rd down distances. 3rd and 3, they convert. 3rd and 3, they fail. 3rd and 2, they convert. And then the 3rd and 11, they converted. And even though they failed on a 3rd and 3, they failed on a 3rd and goal from the 1, and they converted the 3rd and 11, even though some of those shorter distances didn't convert, it was sort of indicative of how Georgia Tech was able to move the ball in the 4th quarter, that they were able to have 2 drives where they didn't face a single 3rd down, and on several other drives they were facing short 3rd downs. Those are favorable positions and lead directly to a team scoring 17 points in the 4th quarter. And of course, that final touchdown drive after Pitt scores to make it 19-14, arguably one of the worst plays of the game, one of the biggest plays of the game, the backbreaker, that was ultimately the nail in the coffin for Pitt, a 63-yard run on 1st down. Pitt cuts the score to 5 points, 19-14 with 2 minutes left to play. And on the very first play, they go 63 yards. And I asked Pat Narduzzi about that play on Monday, and he said he didn't remember, which I can't really, I don't know what he was trying to cover for in that situation. I don't know how you could forget a back-breaking play like that. Every other person in the room, I know, knew what play I was talking about. And Narduzzi said he wasn't sure. He couldn't remember. There were so many big runs that he couldn't remember which one was which. That one was a big one and a significant one. And ultimately, if you get a stop there, and it doesn't even have to be a 3-and-out, but if you get off the field at that point, you're going to have a really good chance. You're going to have 90 seconds or so to get down the field for potentially a game-winning touchdown and sneak out of there with a win. Probably a 20-19 or 22-19 win, depending on whether you make the 2-point conversion. That was a back-breaking play. And the problem with these third and shorts, I mean, obviously third and shorts are always, going back to this third down thing, third and shorts are always it's a challenging situation for a defense. Offenses can do a lot of different things. If it's short enough, they can try a quarterback dive, which Georgia Tech did on I think one occasion. They converted a 3rd and 1 on the first drive of the game with a dive by Jeff Sims, a 2-yard gain. But there's a lot of options, obviously, in those third and short situations. What it also does is it keeps Pitt out of the Delta defensive package. Now, we've talked about the Delta for a long time, basically since Pat Narduzzi arrived. It's that third down defensive package. If you watch, they'll take a defensive lineman, a defensive tackle usually, off the field, go with 2 ends and a tackle. Typically, Haba Baldonado, Kalijah Cansey, and John Morgan or Deslin Alexander. If everyone's healthy, it'll be those 3 guys. And then they bring in usually an extra defensive back. And so last year was unique. Most years it's been an extra safety. Last year they brought in John Patrician as the extra defensive back. It was almost like a 3-4 is how the personnel was. 3 D linemen, 4 linebackers, and 4 DBs. But typically they brought in an extra safety. This year they started off using Rashad Battle in that role. Battle is out for the season, so now Javon McIntyre, the redshirt freshman, is playing that role as the extra defensive back in the Delta defensive package. It's had mixed results this season, but it was really good against Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech was 3 of 12 on third down against that Delta defensive package. 12 times, and Georgia Tech failed on 9 of them. And 2 of the 3 conversions that they had, actually, all 3 were running plays. All 3 of the conversions. They had a 3rd and 10 on the first drive of the game where they had the Delta defensive package out there. They like to blitz out of that package. They like to fake blitz out of that package. They like to show blitz. They like to show 6 or 5 or 4 rushing and then do something different. You know somebody's coming, but you're never really sure who it is. And a lot of times it might just be 4 guys or sometimes even 3. But because it looks like 6 are coming, it makes it a little bit easier for one of those 3 to get home. So on the first drive of the game, Georgia Tech's facing a 3rd and 10. Pitt brings pressure, gets pressure on Jeff Sims, and he scrambles for 10 yards, picks up a first down. That happened again on the second drive of the second half, Georgia Tech's second drive of the second half. It was a 3rd and 9. Again, pressure comes, Sims scrambles, gets away from the pressure, and runs for 10 yards. And then the third conversion that Georgia Tech had against the Delta defensive package was that 3rd and 11 we talked about on their third drive of the second half. It was a 3rd and 11. They ran against it. Again, probably expecting to go for 4-down territory. They ran against it and ended up just pushing the pile for an extra like 6 or 7 or 8 yards or however many it took to get 13 yards and a first down. But so you had, basically 2 busted plays and then a run, an effort run that converted 3rd downs against that Delta defense. Now, down in distance, you're looking at 3rd and 10, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 11, 2 3rd and 23s, a 15, a 7, a 9, a 22, another 9, another 7, and 11. 3rd and long, Pitt likes to use that defensive package, and they use it very well. Like I say, Georgia Tech converted 3 of 12. On those 12, Pitt got 2 sacks. 2 of their 4 sacks came out of that defensive package. Bengali Kamara had one, and Solomon DeShields had one. And I think that's where those guys have gotten most of their sacks this season and a lot of their production. Those 2 guys in particular, Kamara and DeShields, have gotten their production out of that Delta defensive package. Quite frankly, that might be where those guys operate best because they have an opportunity to blitz. They're still figuring out the defense, still figuring out how they fit into the defense, figuring out what they need to do in the heat of the moment when, what the coaches say, when the bullets are flying and it's live action. They're still trying to figure out how they fit in and what they're supposed to do. I think you'd like them to be further along than they are right now. But there's still seem to be gaps every now and then. I think that's why you saw Tyler Wiltz play as much as he did ahead of Bengali Kamara. He didn't play as many snaps as Kamara, but Kamara got a lot of extra snaps in the Delta, which is a good place for him, particularly at this point in his development. He's a big, fast athlete playing outside linebacker, just like Solomon DeShields. When you turn those guys loose on 3rd down out of that package where you're never really sure who's coming, you got a chance for big plays and exciting plays. And I think if they keep doing that, you're going to have opportunities for turnovers, either a rush throw, and a bad decision, or a strip sack fumble. So there are good things that can happen out of that package with those guys. And I think fans have kind of wanted more out of the linebackers. Tyler Wiltz told us yesterday that we shouldn't, that the linebackers playing really well and people shouldn't be bad-mouthing them. I can understand both perspectives, but I think you have to like what those guys have done in that Delta defensive package and the success that they've had. The key, though, is getting the other team into third and long. Don't let them get into third and manageable situations where you either have to keep your base defense on the field or you play you play the Delta and you feel like you're putting yourself in jeopardy against the run, which is what the Pitt coaches feel. I think they feel like that personnel grouping, that formation is vulnerable to the run. So that's something to watch going forward. First and second down success. Pitt had a lot of it in the first three quarters when Georgia Tech was 2 of 12 on third down. Not so much success, particularly on, first and second down, not as much success in the fourth quarter. And Georgia Tech turned it into 3 of 5 conversions on third down and not coincidentally 17 points in the fourth quarter. And I think it's due to not just the struggles on third down, but the struggles on first and second down that sort of precipitated it. So a lot of defense and special teams there. Got to clean up the penalties on special teams. Have to win on first and second down on defense. And if the offense continues to struggle, those two units, you hate to say anybody has to be perfect, but they got to be pretty close. They got to be pretty close to it. All right, we are live tonight. Don't forget, 8:30 p.m. right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button so you can boost our numbers. We really appreciate that. We like all the likes that we get on these videos. Add your comments. We try and respond to them as much as we can. But tonight, it'll be live, so we'll have live conversation in the chat screen. You can post your comment or your question during the live Panther-Lair show, and we will talk about it. We'll answer your questions, respond to your comments. We'll have a little back and forth. I'll talk for a little bit, and then we'll get some conversation and some discussion going as Pitt looks for its first ACC win. Should be a fun conversation tonight as we move through the middle of the week. I know I'm looking forward to it. I hope you are too. In the meantime, stay tuned at Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. We'll have all the coverage right there, and all the, of course, message board conversation and all the things you enjoy about Panther-Lair.com. So thanks for tuning in today. Hope you've had a great week so far. Hope you have a great Wednesday. We'll talk to you tonight for the Panther-Lair show at 8:30 p.m. And then we'll be back first thing in the morning with another Morning Pitt right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.